Welcome back to Collaborations, where we go over the worst cooperative efforts of two very different artists. Oh man, that name really only works when it's written out, doesn't it? Oh well, that's the name I picked. I'll stick with it until someone comes up with something better.
Lil Dicky.
So while I was looking over the best and worst music videos of 2018, I was reintroduced to a music video I remember being quite contentious, and given my own personal fascination with it, I couldn't evaluate and explain it all in simply 5 minutes. So that's what we'll be covering today. Let me set the stage for you. The year is 2017. An artist named Lil Dicky, having not released any proper songs in 3 years, decides he wants to make the best song he could have done to prove himself. He puts pen to paper and comes up with the concept, a recreation of the premise of the 2003 film Freaky Friday, where he switches lives with a superstar. And he realizes that there's no better person in the world to embody that superstar and bring this fantasy to life than Chris Brown. Yeah, you heard correctly, the man responsible for the felony assault of Rihanna and countless others. That's the guy Lil Dicky wants to idolize. So he brings together an unfinished demo and takes it to Chris and his team. Chris took to the concept immediately, and the two set to work to bring it to life. So, we have an up-and-coming comedy rapper who wants to make light of everything by reaching for the low-hanging fruit, and a lingering hip-hop artist whose very serious controversies and legal issues more often than not overshadow his music. What could possibly go wrong?
YouTube, gotta get it off. But as I type the Y, use some porno pop up. I'm like, hold up, that's not even me. Like, I don't jerk off mobily. Oops, I said on my dick. I ain't really mean to say on my dick. But since we talking about my dick, all of you here to say hi to it. Ever since I've been alone, I've been thinking back, listening to your auto-tune and my microphone, making us laugh, you know. Hey, what's going on, man? It's your boy Lil Dicky, aka Mr. Leftward Sloping Penis.
This is David Bird, aka Lil Dicky, a rapper who saw success in the mid-2010s and specialized in rap flows with a comedy twist. In some ways, he's kind of the reverse Mike Posner. Posner had a big hit that most people remember fondly was Passable, but at the time was railed by critics. And then, because of that, he went on to make the best song of his entire career. And in sharp contrast, Dicky went from his first big hit that most people remember fondly, but was railed by critics, on to making the worst music video of the year. A gaping void of charisma and comedy that was only spectacular in its failure. I've already ripped into Earth for the tragic little disaster that it is, so today we're going to be looking at that first big hit that got him in a position to make Earth to begin with. The hit in question, Freaky Friday, is a song about Dicky finally getting to swap lives with a famous rapper so he can live the life he always wanted. Unfortunately, the famous rapper in question is Christopher Maurice Brown. For those of you that don't know, Chris Brown is a rapper who saw tremendous success in the late 2000s, early 2010s, and has been a constant presence on the charts ever since. I think everyone knows him for one reason or another. He's a singer, he's a dancer, he's a dynamic performer, he's a Q-tip, he's living the sweet life with Zack and Cody. Alright, maybe not that last one. But what a very large amount of people know him for is his history of being a reprehensible criminal. These crimes include, but are not limited to, a felony assault against his then-girlfriend Rihanna, with images detailing the extent of the damage he did to her made widely available through the public. Now, I'd have to assume that Lil Dicky does not want to glorify the criminal history of Chris Brown, and more so that he's got respect for him as a talented performer, who was and is very respected in the world of rap and hip-hop. I presume this thinking was along the lines of, well, if Chris Brown can continue to make music and chart on Billboard for a few decades now, despite what he's done, he must be a real quality performer and artist. Well, unfortunately, it's not as simple as that. But Chris Brown's continued success is not something we're going to be analysing today.
I woke up Chris Breezy. Oh my God, I'm the man. I'm so fly and I can dance. There's tattoos on my neck.
The first hurdle that this song and video demand the audience jump over right out of the blocks is, can you deal with the premise? So in this reimagining, Dicky and Brown both bemoan their struggles of their lives as rappers at two very different levels. So a Chinese man swaps their bodies so they can experience what the other has. And it's this premise that introduces the idea of Lil Dicky celebrating being Chris Brown, which is where you lose a lot of people. And to be fair, that's a really fucking hard barrier to pass. If we were to take it from Dicky's perspective in the narrative, he's been an under-the-surface rapper, trying to develop his own niche, but not getting the respect that he thinks he's earned. So to Dicky, he's celebrating Chris Brown the singer, Chris Brown the performer, Chris Brown the success story, not necessarily celebrating Chris Brown the person. As a singer, performer, and success story, his body of work is impressive. As a person, well... The problem is that this video doesn't emphasize and clarify his motivation enough, and we'll talk about what it's too busy doing to properly address that later. But because of that, it comes across as though Dicky is just idolizing an abuser. But that's not a new revelation for anyone familiar with the video and its backlash. So why am I bothering at all? Well, I actually grew up with a real appreciation for Chris Brown when I was younger, so it may just be nostalgia for With You and Forever giving him a foot in the door here. But I'm also talking about the video due to my fondness for Lil Dicky. As surface-level crude and repetitive as his shtick ends up being, I still have fond memories of his music videos where his flow and delivery was always complemented with videos that were either really thoughtful and creative, or edited tight enough to understand how to deliver the comedy properly. I'm also more inclined to give this a pass because it's a DJ Mustard track, which explains why it sounds so good. So let's talk about the video itself.
I woke up and I'm Lil Dicky. Lil Dicky? What the fuck? This shit is real weak. How's Dick staying perched up on his balls like that?
This would normally be where I walk you through the plot, picking at the pieces that don't work and giving you a rough overview of what to expect. But honestly, there's a part of me that thinks, well, there's no point in trying to pick apart the plot. Like, it's abundantly clear the plot is just an excuse to tell jokes and set up sight gags. But if the plot isn't important and the jokes are what's important, why does the video have so much emphasis on the plot and not the jokes? I mean, we literally open the video with him in some kind of forced interaction that serves no purpose other than belittling him. It's not very joke heavy. Obviously the intent is to justify why the song is about how swapping bodies with Chris Brown is a good thing. He'd finally get respect as a proper rapper. But with how it's put together, it just comes across as awkward and drawn out. And because of this, it draws our attention to the problems with the plot even more. Like in his other songs, when he's explaining the plot, the flow comes at us fast enough where we aren't sitting there absorbing every line he says. But with all this painful setup, we don't have a choice but to think about it. But also the defense of just ignore the story doesn't really work, because we've seen videos and songs in the past where the unfolding narrative is the focus and gives the song a flow that makes it more engaging.
Grab a seat. Thanks, I'm Dave. Very nice to meet. Dave, what it do? You can call me dog. Let me just check your sheet. No problem, sir. Let me just say, I'm a big fan of the shit that y'all make. I can't lie, I've been thinking about this all day. All good, there's a reason that we call Dave.
Dicky's ongoing dialogue with Snoop in Professional Rapper is what keeps the audience's interest more so than the beat. The back and forth is what's fascinating in that video.
You ain't even sold a damn album yet, Troll. That's a lot of talk from a Wally vet, let alone a young rook, nigga. You misread me. No, this ain't a book, nigga. Well, that's one of my flaws. I'm too competitive, dog. No, you just fucking repetitive, dog. I get it, you trying to be better than all, but you aren't shit into cheddars involved.
Now, I guess you could say that they're quite good in how they play off each other. Dicky plays his role as the frustrated Chris well, and Chris plays his role as Dicky with an excitement and an energy that makes the video more believable, but also more fun. I can't say the other three cameos are used any more effectively though. What's kind of baffling is that he managed to get Ed Sheeran on that final line at all. Like, Ed Sheeran in 2018 was one of the biggest male singers in the world at the time, and having him appear and self-deprecate is funny and all, but it's a kind of a weird letdown when the punchline is just, he's not as cool as Chris Brown. I think it's just this really surface level stuff that doesn't demonstrate Dicky's best work. DJ Khaled is an easy joke, but an effective one. And then we get to Kendall, who, let's be clear, is the worst part of any song from 2018.
I'm Kendall Jenner. I got a vagina. I'm gonna explore that right now. Holy shit, I got a vagina. I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna understand the inner workings of a woman.
She's worse than heroin morphine. The limited skips on a Spotify free account are worth using just so you don't have to hear her delivery. You're better off clicking away from the music video than hearing the last line. The line is not only delivered in a way that's so ridiculously offbeat it's actually a bit offensive, but also the joke is that Dicky is going to have his way with Jenna's body while he's inhabiting it.
Sounds like you were raped to me, Mark. Classic case.
Actually, while we're on the topic of Dicky's humour, maybe there's some world where a song glorifying Chris Brown could have been done properly. But I really don't think in that world the song is made by Lil Dicky. At the end of the day, his material here just isn't very good. Of course, humour is subjective, and everyone's going to laugh at different things, but this song's joke distribution is really off. In the first verse, the only joke was the random non sequitur about Chris Brown having a kid. And then it's just him relishing that he can say the N-word now. Is it possible I'm expecting too much from a man who elects to call himself Lil Dicky? I don't think so. What's odd is that his shtick has been understood and accepted for quite a long time. There was clearly a lot of investment in him as he was able to get some pretty high-tier collaborators on his albums and in his videos. But not as joke cameos either, actual collaborators. And I think his comedic edge being brought to higher and higher echelons is something that is pleasing to his fans, but also to the regular Joes just listening to the top 40, because it is different enough from what you would normally hear. I think the bigger issue is that in those upper echelons, his comedy doesn't sufficiently evolve to meet the rising tide. Like in this video, him joking about how happy he is to now be as endowed as Chris Brown, and similarly joking about how small he is in comparison, it's already kind of pushed to the limit, because it's functionally just the same joke and he goes on to repeat it a third time later. But then, in Earth, when he's trying to do this environmental song, calling on some of the biggest names in the industry, his comedy just isn't up to scratch at all. It's basically non-existent. And while there are more jokes and punchlines in this song than in Earth, it's a ridiculously low bar to clear. I think that's the part that's so frustrating about this video. It's so close to being good. The concept is solid, and the video is executed properly. It's filmed competently, it's edited quick enough to keep the pace, and there are little details to appreciate, like the guy from the Chinese restaurant appearing in the background watching the two of them. If this song was about anybody else in the industry, the premise alone would have been brilliant, and I think so many more people would have been on board. But it's not about anybody else. It's about Chris Brown. And that's a pill that's just too tough to swallow. And in a way, I can see why it can't really be about anybody else. Like, you'd think if he had access to Ed Sheeran or DJ Khaled or whoever, he'd be able to Freaky Friday with any of them and completely avoid all of this controversial BS. But Dicky's goal is to be a rapper. Not specifically famous or rich. I mean, I'm sure he'd like to be all those things as well. But he's always been projecting that his goal is to be a rapper. So you're already cutting down the list of potential collaborators for this song down to successful rappers. Once you've culled that list down, you then need to think about what rappers might actually be willing to humour Dicky in his endeavour. Like, try to name me a successful rapper now who is willing to sing a line earnestly about how big his dick is, not in any bragging way, just entirely honestly admiring it. Just looking down the list of successful rappers from 2017, Kendrick, Childish Gambino and Drake almost certainly don't strike me as artists willing to stoop to that level back then. But even if you use artists who embody a particular amount of masculinity and might be willing to self-aggrandize for a quick buck, I don't reckon artists like Future, Migos or Logic can really match Dicky's energy. So in a way, Chris Brown is really the only logical choice. I mean, even today, I can't imagine there'd be many artists who'd fit the bill for what the role requires. And if we're being completely honest, Chris brings the right amount of energy to the role. If you're able to get past the fact that the song is designed around idolizing him, which I'm not saying is correct or easy, Chris is putting a considerable amount of effort in his expressions, his acting, his movement, and it's to his credit that he's so believable in the role. Honestly, what a tragic mess this whole thing ended up being. Like, Earth set out to do some good, but it was doomed from the start because the focus was more on the ensemble cast rather than the actual activism it was trying to promote. I think the ingredients were ultimately building towards something that could have been impressive. DJ Mustard, Benny Blanco, Freaky Friday. And then he threw in one last ingredient. And really all it comes down to at the end of the day is, can you look past the fact that this video's premise is about the glorification of Chris Brown? If you can, I think there's a bit to enjoy here. Although if you can't, you're not missing out on the best music video by any means, and you'll probably go your life without having to hear Kendall Jenner squawk over a mustard beat.
Holy shit, I got a vagina. I'm gonna learn.